think when Parliament returns next week, we're going to see things come to a head. We're going to see MPs attempt to try and take action to stop no-deal Brexit, and that's going to happen a lot sooner than might have occurred. We might have been looking at the middle of October before all of this happened. Now it's going to be a lot more happening in early September. It's when they're choosing to do it that is the really controversial issue, and is going to be massively politically controversial. And the government's tried to argue this is about introducing new bills for domestic agenda. It's not about Brexit, but this is very much about Brexit. This is about curtailing the amount of time that Parliament would have to try and stop the government doing what it wants to do. It's going to massively impact not only the amount of time that those trying to stop no deal have available, but it also affects the government. The idea that the government can then bring a new deal back to Parliament and get all the legislation through during that period is also really pushing it. So it means that that time available for all is going to be sort of cut hugely. They can do a lot in a very short period of time if the will is there for it, but there are big obstacles facing them. One of them is the House of Lords, where it is possible for peers to try and slow the process and to try and undermine it. Another is just the level of scrutiny that's needed for any legislation. Depends what the legislation is trying to do. If it's, again, as it was back in April, trying to force the government to ask for an extension, then it might be a sort of simpler piece of legislation, but there's still big obstacles. There's no point saying never at this point, though, but it's possible. At the moment, there's a lot of cards that the government are able to play. They control a lot of parliamentary time. They control sort of key aspects of our constitution in terms of setting a date for a general election, being the incumbent government and being able to advise the Queen on things like asking for this prorogation and the sort of new date for a parliamentary session. So in this sort of battle as it's turning into between the executive and the legislature, yes, the executive have a lot of power, but I think there's still a lot that the legislature can do, that Parliament can do, that the Commons can do, and I think they will try to, because the stakes have been raised so high and emotions are running quite high at the moment. So I think there's a lot of twists and turns to happen.